"You're just background noise, David. You'll never be the main character." That's what Mary said to me in front of the entire cafeteria during senior year, her voice loud enough to hush 100 conversations. Laughter followed, echoing down the hallways like bullets ricocheting off my spine. I didn't look back. I never did. Not because I was weak, but because I was building something in silence, something no one could mock, not even her. Back then, I sat alone with my tray of cold food and warmer humiliation, pretending it didn't sting. George had been the one next to her, chuckling softly as if laughing would keep him safe from her cruelty. And Sarah? She'd looked at me that day with pity in her eyes, but pity never saved anyone. I remember going home, ripping that day out of my sketchbook and writing a single sentence across the blank page. "I'll make sure she remembers my name." It's been 3 years since that moment. Now I walk into the rooftop lounge of one of the city's most exclusive tech investor galas. I'm not here to impress anyone, I'm here because they need me. I wear the same style of clothes I always did, simple, clean. But my name tag says something new. Founder CEO, Mirrorframe Technologies. Funny how people suddenly see you when your startup valuation crosses 8 figures. And that's when I see her. Mary. At the far end of the room, sipping from a flute of champagne she didn't pay for, her smile flashing at everyone and landing nowhere. She's dressed in brand names she never knew in school, heels too tall for comfort, and ambition written across her face like makeup. But underneath all of that, she still scans the crowd with eyes that need a landing point. A target. A seat. Her eyes lock onto me, and pause. There's hesitation, then confusion, and then the flicker of disbelief. She mouths my name as if it were a ghost from a past she thought had stayed. Yet buried in the school hallways. I don't move. Sarah walks over from the bar, placing a glass beside me. "You okay?" she asks, noting my silence. Her dress is black, sleek, not trying to impress, just like her. Always subtle, always grounded. She glances toward Mary, then back at me. "Didn't think she'd be here?" "She wasn't on the guest list," I reply, my voice even. But she always knew how to sneak into things she didn't earn. Sarah lets out a short breath, half amusement, half tension. "You want me to say something?" "No," I say. "Let her come to me." And she does. Mary starts walking, careful steps like each one might be a mistake. Her smile is rehearsed, her voice sweetened with familiarity. "David? Oh my God, it is you. I almost didn't recognize you. You look so different." I take a sip of my drink, eyes steady. "Do I?" She laughs nervously, brushing her hair behind her ear like she used to when lying. "Wow, I can't believe you're here. I mean, this place is huge. And you, Mirrorframe, right? That's your company? That app's been everywhere. I've been trying to get in touch with someone from the team. Your AI's insane." I stare at her for a moment before speaking. "You remember what you called me senior year?" She freezes, visibly flinching. "David, that was high school. We were kids. I didn't mean it. You called me invisible." She opens her mouth, then closes it. I nod toward the empty seat beside me. "Now here you are," I say, voice quiet but slicing, asking for a seat at my table. Most people say high school fades, that the lockers blur, the faces fade, and the voices get drowned in adulthood. That's a lie. Some voices stay lodged in your head like splinters you can't pull out, sharp and burning every time you breathe. Mary's voice was one of them. I wasn't always invisible. When I was younger, I used to raise my hand first. I used to ask questions. I used to present science projects with pride. But somewhere between 6th grade and 8th, the room changed. The hands that used to pat me on the back started brushing past me. The jokes that used to make people laugh now made them look at me like I was weird. And Mary? She laughed loudest of all. We were in the same class from grade school all the way to senior year. Always seated alphabetically, so my last name, Dalton, meant I ended up 2 rows behind her every time. She had a laugh that caught attention, a voice that teachers heard over everyone else, and the ability to turn a hallway into a stage. She wasn't just popular, she controlled the social gravity in the room. And me? I became a ghost. I'd still show up, still complete every assignment, still get the top score in computer science and math. But no one looked my way. Not unless they needed help cheating. Not unless someone needed a volunteer for something no one wanted to do. The sad part is, I got used to it. I learned how to disappear inside classrooms full of people. I wore neutral colors, I kept my head down. I stopped raising my hand. Mary noticed it too, and she didn't let it go. "Hey, if you're gonna be invisible, at least be useful and pass this forward," she'd say during tests. Or, "David's like the school's Wi-Fi, he's everywhere, but no one ever really sees him." Everyone laughed, even George. George had been my friend once. Back in middle school, we used to build model rockets and race code bots in robotics class. But in high school, George chose relevance, he chose status, and status came from being near Mary. Sarah, on the other hand, was different. She sat behind me in English Lit and always smelled like vanilla and coffee. She wasn't loud, she wasn't quiet either, she just existed with confidence, like she didn't need approval. She was friends with Mary too, but never unkind. She didn't laugh when I got called names, she didn't join in the whispers, and sometimes I'd catch her watching me, not in judgment, just observing, like I was a puzzle she was trying to understand. We spoke only a few times back then, once during group work when we got paired by accident. She corrected my grammar on a slide and smiled when I fixed it. Another time, she asked me what I always scribbled in my black notebook. I lied and said they were just notes. Truth was, they were ideas, screens, wireframes, logic trees, UI mockups for platforms no one had built yet. I was designing futures while they were busy capturing moments for Instagram stories. My parents were both engineers, quiet, practical people who taught me that silence wasn't weakness, that attention was overrated. I used to believe that, until the silence became suffocating. After Mary called me invisible in front of the school, something shifted. It wasn't rage, it wasn't a vow for revenge, it was a cold, clean break between who I was and who I refused to be anymore. I spent that summer locked inside the garage with my laptop, a second-hand monitor, and more caffeine than sleep. I taught myself APIs I'd never touched before, built my own back-end structure, learned to connect databases from scratch, and cleaned up my UI with better design flow. I launched a small productivity tool. Nothing fancy, but it gained traction, 3,000 downloads in 1 month, then 20,000. Then Venture Scout started watching my GitHub commits. By the time college rolled around, I'd already pitched 3 different apps. Mirror Frame, the 4th one, stuck. A photo and journaling hybrid app with encrypted memory tracking and smart AI mood mapping. It started as a therapeutic tool for people who didn't like writing but wanted to express. I built it for people like me. Within 8 months, it reached 1 million users. Now I wasn't invisible, now people pitched me. And in that same fall semester, during a business networking gala hosted at the top floor of an elite co-working space, I saw her again, Mary. Dressed in a sharp navy dress, wearing red lipstick like it was armor, heels high enough to intimidate, and a smile so bright it looked rehearsed. She was scanning the room, hungry. She wasn't the queen bee anymore, she was a hopeful bee, buzzing toward power. She didn't recognize me at first. I hadn't changed my face, but my presence had changed. People gathered around me, laughed at my jokes, asked me about what I was working on next. I was no longer background. It wasn't until Sarah walked up and handed me a drink that Mary's gaze finally landed on me, and froze. Sarah had changed too, more elegant, still minimalistic, still unreadable, but there was a softness to her now that felt earned, not performed. "David," she said that night, standing beside me at the railing, looking out over the skyline, "I always wondered when people would see what I saw." I didn't answer right away. I watched Mary walk toward us, slow, cautious, unsure. I thought about all those days sitting behind her, watching her braid her hair, watching her point at me and giggle to her friends, watching her claim a space in every room like it was built for her, and now she was the one waiting to be let in. She smiled as if we were old friends. "Oh my God, David Dalton?" Her voice was laced with disbelief. "Is that really you?" Sarah sipped her dry. "Ink. He gets that a lot these days." Mary laughed, a little too loud. "Wow, you look so different, like grown up, confident. And Mirror Frame, that's yours, right? I've seen that logo everywhere. I actually emailed your company last week." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, what for?" Business, she said quickly. Partnership opportunities. I'm part of a digital branding collective now. We're scouting new platforms. Sarah let out the faintest chuckle. Mary looked at the empty seat beside me and gestured casually. Mind if I sit? I looked at the chair, then back at her. Sure, I said. But just so we're clear, you used to say I was invisible, so if I fade out halfway through, don't be surprised. Her smile flickered. I was stupid, she admitted. High school brings out the worst in people sometimes. I didn't say anything. I let her squirm a little longer. Mary glanced at Sarah. And you two? Are you? Sarah raised her glass. Friends, co-investors, alumni of the same pain. That made me smile. Mary shifted, unsure how to hold her posture anymore. Well, I just wanted to say, it's amazing what you've done, and if you ever want someone to help with user engagement or brand strategy, I'd love to collaborate. I nodded slowly, leaned forward just enough and said, thanks, I'll let the team know. Mary's eyes narrowed just slightly, as if registering the distance I'd carefully placed between us, as if realizing, finally, that the seat at the table wasn't hers by default anymore. That maybe, just maybe, the invisible boy had learned how to make shadows move around him instead. It started with an email, not from Mary, not directly. It came from a marketing firm with a name I didn't recognize, Citrine Echo Media. The subject line was clean, confident, strategic proposal for Mirrorframe's Q4 expansion. I forwarded it to Sarah, who handled most of our brand partnerships. Her reply was instant. They're trying too hard, looks recycled. But something about it felt familiar, the layout, the tone, the unnecessary italics. I opened the attached PDF and read the full pitch deck, and there it was, buried in the creative team bios slide, her name, Mary Elwood, role, engagement strategist. The summary read like it was pulled straight from a LinkedIn post written by someone else. I sat still for a full minute before shutting the laptop. So this was it. This was how she re-entered the orbit. I didn't respond to the email, but 3 days later, she messaged me directly. Hey David. Saw you didn't respond to the Citrine pitch, would love to chat more directly if you're open. I stared at the blinking cursor in the chat box for what felt like an hour. My hands didn't move. I knew what this was. Mary had once weaponized popularity, now she was weaponizing timing. Mirrorframe had just secured Series A funding. Our app had landed on the top 10 social tools chart in multiple countries. Press was rolling in, influencers wanted in. Suddenly, I was visible, and visibility attracted Mary like perfume attracts bees. That night, I was having ramen with Sarah in the corner booth of our usual post-meeting haunt. I mentioned the email casually. She didn't look up from her noodles. She's testing the water, Sarah said, seeing if you'll still bend. I'm not. Good. But part of me wants to hear what she has to say. Sarah finally looked up. Why? Because it's bothering me that it's bothering me, I admitted. Sarah nodded once, slowly. You want closer. Or revenge, but not both. Choose one. I didn't respond. The next day, without replying to Mary, I asked our team to arrange a strategy call with Citrine Echo Media, keeping it professional. The meeting invite went out for Thursday morning. She accepted within 2 minutes. That Thursday, I walked into the conference room early. Sarah came in 10 minutes later, holding 2 coffees. She handed one to me and said, "Remember, you're the one with the table now." The screen blinked to life. Several faces joined the call, analysts, branding reps, creative leads, and then, her. Mary smiled like we were old friends meeting for coffee. "David," she said, as if the years between us had been warm. "Thanks for making time." Sarah's jaw was locked tight beside me. Mary launched into her pitch, supported by her team. She was polished, she always had been. She spoke with ease, gestured fluidly, and referenced trend data like she'd memorized it in her sleep, but her eyes kept flicking to mine, measuring, gauging, looking for any sign of forgiveness. At one point, she said, "Mirrorframe has this emotional resonance that most apps only dream of. People don't just use it, they trust it, and trust is everything, especially with younger audiences. I think I can help scale that, if you'll let me." I leaned back and said nothing, let the silence press in. Sarah was the one who answered, her voice razor sharp. "Appreciate the enthusiasm. We'll review internally and circle back." The call ended. Sarah turned to me the moment the screen went black. "Do not let her in." "I wasn't going to," I said. "She's not here for the company, she's here for you." "I know. And it's not love, it's reputation." I nodded. "She thinks proximity will rewrite the past." Sarah's tone was low. "She's testing whether the boy she ignored will still let her sit beside him if she smiles just right." That night, Mary messaged me again. "Hey, I hope that wasn't too forward today. I just really believe in what you're building. Honestly, I always did. Even in school, I just didn't know how to show it." I read the message 5 times, then shut my phone. The next week, we had a closed-door executive brainstorm with our VC partners and team leads. It was critical. Sarah and I presented a new strategy involving community creators and authentic micro-influencer campaigns. We'd spent 3 months refining it. And halfway through the meeting, she walked in. Mary, uninvited, wearing a citrine badge and carrying a demo folder like she belonged there. One of the junior investors had apparently mentioned the session, and she'd taken it as an open invitation. Sarah's head turned slowly. "She did not." "Oh, she did." Mary smiled at everyone, especially me. "Sorry I'm late, was running behind from another pitch." Then turned to the room like she owned it. "Mind if I say a few words?" My throat tightened. She launched into a 10-minute hijacking of the meeting, referencing features she didn't understand and tossing out engagement ideas we'd already scrapped months ago. It was clear to everyone but her that she was freelancing, trying to get a foot in. George was there too, now a junior advisor in one of our seed firms. I saw him leaning against the wall, eyes bouncing between me and Mary like he couldn't decide whether to interfere. When she finished, the room was silent. I stood slowly. "Thank you, Mary," I said. "But this isn't a pitch room, it's a war room. We're not looking for cheerleaders, we're looking for builders." Someone coughed, a chair squeaked. Mary smiled again, smaller this time. "Of course, I just thought." "I know what you thought," I said, voice calm. "You thought I'd still be the guy who sat 2 rows behind you, the one who kept his voice down so yours could echo. But I don't owe you that anymore." Her expression flickered, and for a moment I saw it, doubt, the first crack in her armor. She left 10 minutes later. The room resumed. That night, she sent one final message. "Didn't realize I was unwelcome. I just thought maybe we could start over, but I get it, some people change, some never do." I stared at it for a long time, then hit delete, not block, just delete. Some wounds don't need revenge, they need indifference, and some seats stay empty. On purpose. It's strange how silence can be louder than sound. After Mary walked out of the war room, the tension didn't leave with her, it followed me home. It followed me into the elevator, into the reflection of myself in polished chrome, into the empty hum of my apartment where the light from my phone flickered like a dying heartbeat. Her words weren't what haunted me, it was the fact that I felt something at all. I thought I'd moved on, thought the bruises had healed, but they hadn't, they'd just buried themselves deeper, under success and silence and the illusion of being over it. Because when she looked at me with that surprised recognition in her eyes, when she smiled and tried to pick up the past like it was something casually dropped, I didn't just feel anger, I felt fear. Fear that some part of me still wanted to be seen by her. Fear that after everything I built, part of me was still 15 years old, still waiting for her to look at me and not laugh, and that terrified me more than anything she could ever say. I walked to the studio late that night. Our design hub on the 19th floor was quiet, the city's noise filtered into a dull, calming hum. Sarah was still there, alone, bent over wireframes, eyes half-lidded but focused. She looked up when I entered. "Didn't expect you," she said softly. "I couldn't sleep." She pushed a second chair out for me with her foot. I sat. For a long time, we didn't speak. Just stared at the blueprint for MirrorFrame's next big feature, emotion-linked storytelling modules, memory timeline stitched through photos and voice. It was something born out of my journals, the pages no one ever read. "I hate that she still gets to you," Sarah finally said. I didn't reply. "You're not him anymore, David." I closed my eyes. Then why does it feel like I am the second she enters a room? Because she reminds you of who you used to be. And that scares you. She was right. Mary didn't just represent an ex-classmate, she represented every moment I sat in the back of a classroom, afraid to raise my voice. Every night I stared at my sketchpad instead of texting someone. Every weekend I overheard parties I was never invited to. She was the face of silence, and now she was talking like we had history, like we had roots, but what we had was rot. My fingers trembled under the desk. Sarah reached over and stilled them. She can't touch you anymore. But she still makes me feel 12, I whispered. Then you need to decide, she said. Are you going to keep fighting ghosts, or are you finally going to bury them? I didn't answer, because I didn't know. The next morning, I ignored every notification, didn't open Slack, didn't check email, I just walked. The city was noisy, alive, and indifferent. I needed that. Every billboard, every bus stop ad had echoes of mirror frame now. Every time someone recognized the logo, my stomach twisted. Not in pride, in pressure. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was exposed, and that came with a new kind of pain. Eyes everywhere, expectations, history lurking behind every headline. I found myself in front of my old high school. I didn't plan it. My legs just took me there. The building hadn't changed. Still gray, still too clean, still that same weird echo in the halls when you walked too fast. I stood across the street, staring at the library window where Mary had once leaned against the glass, laughing at something George said while I pretended to read on the other side. And that's when I got the message. From George. Hey, can we talk? I hadn't heard from him in 2 years, not directly. He'd commented on a few team updates, clapped for some investor threads, but never messaged. Now he wanted to talk. I replied with a time and place. A rooftop bar I liked, quiet, minimal, no loud music. He arrived 5 minutes late, casual as always. Same athletic build, same expensive haircut, same smile that made people trust him even when they shouldn't. Still allergic to small talk? He asked, sliding into the seat across from me. I've learned to tolerate it, I said. He nodded once, as if testing the water. You built something insane, David. Mirror frame is different, real. It's not just another flash. I didn't say thanks. I waited. He leaned in slightly. I heard about what happened at the strategy session. I stiffened. Look, he said quickly, I didn't know she was going to do that. She's impulsive, and yeah, she's trying to reinvent herself, but I know what she did back in school, to you, to others, and I didn't stop her. That made me look up. He held my gaze. I laughed when she mocked you. I stood by while you got buried, and I'm not proud of that. Silence. Why now? I asked. Because I see what you've become, he said. And I want to say something before you leave us all behind. Before you become too big to reach. I looked away. You were never invisible, David. You were just ahead of us. His words weren't wrong, but they weren't enough. I appreciate the honesty, I said, but that part of my life is over. He nodded slowly, accepted it, then said, one last thing. I turned back. She's still trying to pitch you, not just as a strategist, she's talking to another VC circle, said she has a personal in with you, that's her angle now. Something snapped inside me, not because I didn't expect it, because deep down, I did, but hearing it confirmed, hearing that even now, she was using my name like currency, brought a fresh wave of fury. She always finds a way to turn my silence into her platform, I muttered. Then stop being silent, George said. Shut the door, publicly, finally. That night, I went home and stared at the blinking cursor of a drafted email. Subject, to all our partners, Mirrorframe will not move forward with Citrine Echo Media. I wrote it, signed it, slept on it. The next morning, I hit send. The fallout was immediate. Mary messaged me 3 times, then called, then emailed under a new name. I ignored it all. Instead, I opened a voice memo app and recorded something new. A spoken story. About a boy who was told he was invisible, about a girl who tried to reclaim his spotlight when it burned too bright, about a silence that turned into power, and about how power doesn't look back. I uploaded it to Mirrorframe under a pseudonym. It hit 200,000 plays in a day. Sarah figured out it was mine. She didn't say anything, just left a sticky note on my desk. That was the loudest thing you've ever said. 3 days after I released the anonymous voice story on Mirrorframe, I woke up to headlines: Viral Founder's Audio Memoir, Sparks Internet Theories, Who is the Boy in the Story? Mirrorframe's latest audio hit is raw, painful, and possibly real. Is David Dalton speaking through his platform? The guesswork was flattering, until it wasn't. At first, it stayed in the tech bubble. A few micro-creators dissected the audio, breaking down the emotions line by line. Reddit threads started forming theories. One user cross-referenced the vocal cadence with an old clip of me speaking at a hackathon. Another pointed out that the story of the girl who mocked the boy for being invisible was eerily specific to my old school history. And then, Mary reposted it. On her social profile. Not with context, not with ownership, but with a caption: Healing is powerful, sometimes we have to let the past speak to become better. She framed the story as hers. Her pain, her growth, her redemption arc. Within 24 hours, her post had over 30,000 likes and hundreds of supportive comments. Influencers applauded her vulnerability. People called her brave, her DMs flooded with podcast invites. Public sympathy shifted toward her. I didn't want to believe it at first. But Sarah walked into my office that evening with her phone in her hand and her expression unreadable. She stole it, she said, placing the phone on my desk and playing the clip. It was Mary, being interviewed on a mental health podcast, her voice syrupy and slow. I think the audio really resonated with me because I was that girl once. I said things I regret, and hearing that boy's story reminded me of how easy it is to hurt someone and not even realize it. I never meant to. But I'm learning now. I'm learning how to be better. I stood up from my chair so fast it scraped against the floor. She's not just misrepresenting it, she's claiming emotional ownership, I said, voice low. Sarah crossed her arms. She's manipulating a narrative you created, again, this time on a bigger stage. I didn't respond. I walked to the window, staring out at the skyline. I wasn't sure what burned more, the betrayal, or the fact that people believed her, believed that she was the one hurting, that she was the protagonist now. She took the one thing I made for myself, I said. Not for attention, not for headlines, just to say it, finally, and now she's branding it as her evolution arc. Sarah stepped beside me. What are you going to do? I don't know. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst came hours later when I received a call from one of our angel investors, a man who'd backed Mirrorframe from day one. David, he said carefully, I need to ask something, off the record. Go ahead. Did you approve of Mary's use of the audio? Her rep claims the file was provided internally by Mirrorframe for emotional branding collaboration, that she was part of a joint storytelling effort. My mouth went dry. That's a lie. She's circulating a version of a contract draft. It looks fake, but your name's on it. I gripped the edge of the desk. She forged it? We'll get it analyzed, but press is picking it up. You may want to issue a statement. I hung up and immediately called Sarah. She was already typing furiously when I reached her. She uploaded a PDF with your signature, blurred, but recognizable enough, claims the voice file was a collaboration with her firm. She's walking a legal tightrope, but just enough to stir doubt. My heart was a hammer in my chest. I had built this company from humiliation. I had bled into it, sketched it out with trembling fingers in the back of classrooms while she and George laughed under cafeteria lights, and now she was hijacking the core of it, my truth. I called George. He picked up instantly. David, I heard. I swear I didn't know. She's faking contracts now, I said. If she drags Mirrorframe into a legal battle over a story that belongs to me, it could damage the brand. She's already in meetings, he said. PR agencies, sponsors, a book deal is apparently on the table. I closed my eyes. A book deal, based on my voice, my story. Sarah called an emergency team meeting. Legal reviewed the file. It was indeed doctored, but not enough to be dismissed publicly without a legal process. Mirrorframe's board was panicking over potential fallout. Our lead investor emailed me directly. If this becomes a media war, we lose integrity. Either discredit her fast or acknowledge her as co-creator and silence the storm. That night, I stayed in the office, alone. My hands hovered over my keyboard, empty. My mind raced. Part of me wanted to explode, publicly drag her, drop school photos, name names, post the raw voice memo metadata, and strip her story to the bone. But another part of me remembered Sarah's voice from nights ago. Closure or revenge, not both. I wasn't sure which I wanted anymore. At midnight, Sarah returned. "You're still here," she said. "She's going to ruin everything I built." "No," Sarah said quietly. "She's going to try, but if you let her steal your silence, she wins." I turned to her. "She's rewriting history." "Then write it louder," Sarah whispered. "With your name this time." She held out a hard drive. "What's this?" I asked. "The raw voice file, studio timestamp, authored on your device, original data intact. I also pulled up your school records, projects, submission logs, all date stamped, enough to prove that story was always yours." "You kept all this?" "I knew you'd need it, and I knew you wouldn't ask." My throat closed. "She's not the one who saw you," Sarah said. "I did." I looked up. Her yes were steady. There was something vulnerable sitting behind them, but also fierce, protective, like she was done watching someone else take pieces of me. "I don't want her to steal you from yourself," she said. That broke me. Not in a weak way, in a final way. The silence cracked. The next morning I scheduled a live stream under my own name. Just me, no team, no sponsors, camera on, mic hot. I looked into the lens and told the truth. Word by word. I never expected a notification ping to make my hands shake again. The morning after I scheduled the live stream, MirrorFrame's community servers exploded. Thousands of users online, hundreds waiting in the upcoming events queue. The same platform I had once built for quiet expression was now a stage for the loudest moment of my life, and this time, the silence wasn't safety, it was anticipation. My heart beat like I was walking back into high school all over again. Sarah sat across the room, silent but present. She didn't offer last-minute advice, didn't break my focus with words. Her support was in her stillness, calm, grounding, there. It was 9:59 a.m. At exactly 10 o'clock, I clicked the Go Live button. The screen blinked, then it was just me. And the world. "Hi, my name is David Dalton, founder of MirrorFrame, designer, builder, and today, just David." The chat rolled slowly at first, then began climbing rapidly. Hearts, comments, rows of usernames flooding the screen. I wasn't planning to speak like this, but something happened recently that forced me to ask a question I've avoided for years. What happens when your story is told by someone else? I paused. Some of you heard the anonymous voice upload from last week. Maybe you connected with it, maybe it reminded you of something buried. That recording was mine, my voice, my memories, my silence. Another pause. Years ago, I was bullied in school, not with fists, with indifference, with laughter, with words that said, "You don't belong in the picture." The chat slowed, the tension on the feed became visible. One of the people who led that ridicule is now publicly claiming emotional ownership of my story, of me. I let the sentence hang there. She didn't ask for permission, she didn't apologize, she didn't reflect, she positioned herself as the victim, as the one who's healing, as the protagonist. My voice didn't waver, not once. But here's the truth, you can't borrow someone else's trauma for personal branding. You don't get to rewrite humiliation into character development unless you lived through the fallout. I reached for the hard drive Sarah had handed me and held it up. This is the original recording, time-stamped, metadata authenticated, my software, my voice, my pain. Chat exploded. Users dropped supportive comments like confetti. Others began tagging Mary's handle. I didn't say her name, I never needed to. She once called me invisible, mocked me, publicly, repeatedly, made sure I knew I wasn't part of the story. And now she wants to stand beside me and say she helped write the narrative. I looked straight into the camera. I built MirrorFrame for people like me, people who were silenced, ridiculed, gaslit, not so those same people could later turn vulnerability into a trending post. A long breath. This isn't revenge, this is reclamation. I ended the live feed, exactly 12 minutes of everything I had never said. The aftermath was immediate. Within 20 minutes, the stream was reposted across every platform. Within 1 hour, it was in Tech Digest. Within 2, it was on trending TikTok clips, quote captioned with, "You can't edit your way into someone else's survival." Sarah knocked on the glass of the meeting room where I'd retreated after the broadcast. She opened the door, said nothing, and just held her phone out. Mary had posted a response. Her voice trembled in the video, her makeup was minimal, intentionally bare, the background was soft lighting and indoor plants. "I never wanted to hurt David," she began. "Yes, we went to school together. Yes, I said things back then I regret. I never claimed authorship of the audio, I simply said it resonated, people misunderstood, but I'm glad David found his voice, I'm proud of who he's become." I took the phone and watched the entire video, every second. The apology wasn't an apology, it was defense masquerading as humility, and I knew it, so did Sarah. "She's scared now," Sarah said, and trying to soften the blow. The real blow came 12 hours later, when The Verge published an exposé confirming that the strategic document Mary had circulated to justify her ownership was falsified. A digital forensics firm had taken the metadata apart and released the breakdown publicly. A forged file, a name inserted, a signature vector copied from another contract she had access to from a previous internship. The internet turned fast. Suddenly, Mary wasn't a misunderstood former classmate, she was a manipulator, a thief, someone who almost exploited a man's pain for her own rise. By evening, Mirror Frame's inbox was flooded with apologies, people who had once praised her post, people who had reposted her growth journey. But one reply caught my eye. It wasn't a stranger, it was George. His message was short. "I'm sorry I ever stood beside her, back then and now, if you never want to hear from me again, I understand." I didn't reply, I didn't need to. That night, I sat on the rooftop alone, the city was glowing below, unaware of the weight sitting on my chest, not heaviness, not guilt, but release. Footsteps approached. I didn't need to turn to know it was Sarah. She sat beside me, a steaming paper cup in her hand. She handed it to me. "Hot tea?" "Chocolate?" I asked, surprised. "Tonight's not a coffee night," she replied. We drank in silence for a while, the wind cold but comforting. "I always wondered," she said finally, "why you never fought back in high school, why you let them say what they said." I exhaled slowly. Because I was afraid that if I spoke, no one would listen. Sarah leaned her shoulder into mine. "They're listening now." I nodded. Then she added, quieter. "But you never had to fight alone." I turned to look at her. She wasn't smiling. Her expression was unreadable again, but this time, I knew it wasn't guarded. It was honest. "There's something you should know," she said. "Back in 12th grade, there was this anonymous poem posted in the art club display case, about being forgotten, about drawing worlds no one saw. Everyone assumed it was a girl who wrote it, but I knew." My breath caught. "That was yours?" she asked. I said nothing. Her eyes softened. It stayed with me. Every word. That was the first time I realized. I wasn't just watching someone fade, I was watching someone fight not to disappear. We sat there for a long time. Eventually, she whispered, "I'm glad you finally let yourself be seen." And then, without warning, she reached over and took my hand. Her fingers were steady, warm. Unlike Mary's, they didn't demand attention, they didn't tremble with manipulation, they just were, quiet, loyal, present. Exactly what I had needed all along. 6 months later, Mirror Frame launched its biggest update yet, Echoverse, a full suite built around memory resurrection, photos that spoke, audio that echoed journal entries. Timeline-linked empathy maps. A digital museum of your personal growth. And at the core of its marketing. One campaign, one story. Mine. I didn't hide behind metaphors anymore. I named the characters. I showed real photos. I included an optional chapter in the app, before the frame. There were no faces shown, no legal names used, but the narrative was crystal clear. A boy, a classroom, a girl who mocked him, a stage he built from her shadows, and a chair she was never invited to again. The campaign didn't just go viral, it defined us. We weren't just another app in the attention economy. We were a reclamation engine, a space where people could record the version of themselves that no one believed in and show the world who they became. Downloads doubled. Partnerships exploded. My inbox became a library of thank you notes from strangers across the globe. I was him too. She mocked me in biology. He said I'd never matter. Now I own 2 patents. Your story gave me permission to stop forgiving people who never asked. But the real closure didn't come from success, it came from what I did next. I waited, I watched, and when the time was right, I bought Citrine Echo Media. The entire firm. Through a holding company, silent acquisition, no fanfare, no headlines. 1 week later, I walked into their office, clean suit, calm face, and called a full-hands meeting. The employees gathered, confused, buzzing with speculation. I stood in front of them and introduced myself. I'm David Dalton, I said, founder of Mirror Frame. As of this morning, I also own Citrine Echo Media. Whispers, shock. One of the interns gasped audibly. I continued, this firm has talent, structure, infrastructure. What it doesn't have is integrity. I turned toward the back row. Mary was standing there, arms crossed, face pale. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't seen it coming. 6 months ago, one of your strategists faked a contract, misused a personal story for clout, and almost dragged a clean platform into public scandal, I said clearly. You all know who that was. Silence. I looked at her, dead in the eyes. And yet, you're still here. Her throat moved, she didn't speak. So, here's what's going to happen, I said. Everyone else will be absorbed into Echo Frame, our new content division, with full pay, full equity, and new roles. I paused. Except Mary Elwood. She flinched, just slightly. You're being released, effective immediately, with no severance. Gasps. I didn't stop. You don't get to weaponize other people's voices and stay in the conversation. Not on my watch, not in my house. Mary stepped forward, her voice finally found footing. You can't do this. I just did. She swallowed. You're still punishing me for high school. No, I said, I'm rewarding the boy who survived it. The room fell still. I wanted to believe you could change, I added, but you didn't. You just updated your manipulation tactics, new packaging, same product. Her lips trembled, but she didn't cry. She turned, grabbed her bag, and walked out. Not a single employee followed her. When the door closed behind her, I felt something leave my chest, not relief, not gloating, completion. 2 weeks later, I found myself back at the rooftop bar, the same one George had met me at. This time, I wasn't waiting on anyone. I was reading messages from schools. Yes, high schools, educators requesting permission to use my Echoverse story in classrooms, as a discussion starter, as a mirror. The irony almost made me laugh. The boy they called invisible, now a curriculum. Sarah arrived late, windswept and grinning. You're still reading comments? She teased. I'm replying to a teacher in Ontario. She slid into the chair next to me. You're a movement now. I was just trying to breathe. She studied me for a moment. You've done more than that. You rewrote the laws of emotional gravity. I chuckled softly. Feels strange though. What? To win this quietly, without shouting, without dragging anyone. You didn't need to shout, she said. The world finally got quiet enough to hear you. I looked at her. Really looked. She was still Sarah. Always Sarah. Not loud, not demanding, but undeniable. You were the only one who saw me when I didn't want to be seen. Her gaze didn't waver. You never had to ask. I reached into my pocket and handed her a folded note. A real one. Paper. She opened it. It was the original poem from high school. The one from the display case. Her eyes widened. You kept it? No, I said. I rewrote it. Updated it. For the man I became. She scanned the lines, her lips parting slowly as she read. They tried to white out my name, but I built new pages. They told me I had no CT, so I made a table out of rejection. When she looked up, her eyes were glassy. I never told you this, she whispered, but I used to walk past that display case every day, just to reread that poem. It was my reminder that quiet people feel the most. And now? I asked. She smiled. Now I know quiet people build the loudest legacies. I took her hand. Not out of desperation, not out of loneliness, but because I finally understood the difference between being seen and being chosen. Some time later, a journalist asked me what advice I'd give to my younger self. I said, don't chase a seat at someone else's table, build your own, and when they come back asking for a place, smile, but never forget who walked past you when you had no chair. I paused. And never, ever, give your voice away. The article went viral, but I didn't care. Because somewhere in a quiet apartment, I knew Mary had read it. And that was enough.